Hey, everybody. Sorry for cutting that song off short. I like to listen to it. But hey, it's time. It's that time. It's noon Mountain Time, which is 11 my time on the West Coast. And we are live. So, who do I have with me here? I've got someone different. Maybe you recognize him. You're used to seeing him in the hot seat, but we've actually got him in the co-pilot seat today. So, Aaron, are you with me?
Yes, I am. Hey guys, how's it going? I'm excited to be sitting here in just slovenly disarray, ready to just lend my voice to the live stream and not have to worry about what I look like or what I'm doing or anything. It's going to be awesome.
Yes. You don't have to comb your hair. You don't have to brush your teeth this morning. You just
I'm a wreck. I am a total mess over here, you guys. Seriously.
as long as your voice works.
That's it.
So what are we doing here today? We are going into layout. And I have the SketchUp model behind me here. I'm just going to give you a little heads up before we get into it. Spend a couple minutes, ease into it. And then I want to let everyone kind of come in, hear where everyone's coming from. And we'll just kind of get into it. And we're going to start a little bit in SketchUp, as you would expect. I think when you go into layout, there's some things we need to do first in SketchUp in order to make sure that our layout time is well spent, is efficient. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time up front talking about why I say we, but why maybe I set up the model that I'm gonna show you a certain way. And then we're gonna go in and we're just going to create a document set together. We're gonna see how far. We're gonna actually try and see if we can complete a document set here in 2 hours. So on that note, I should probably stop talking. But Aaron, is there anything from the chat that we want to relay before I'm just gonna, while you're saying that, I'm gonna shrink myself. I'm just gonna do that as we're multitasking.
Yeah, this is pretty awesome. We have people coming in from all over the world, which I love. This is the SketchUp United Nations. Everybody's yelling at Hayes from Canada to Mexico, San Francisco to Nigeria. We got people from all over, and I'm just excited too. Make sure I say layout. Is that the right? I'm saying that correctly?
Layout, yeah, with a big O. So if you're going to write it, make sure that the O is big.
Looking forward to learning this stuff because I'm pretty excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. So, and the idea of getting to a finished drawing from a SketchUp model in 2 hours, that's pretty cool to see that comprehensive workflow. And I'm gonna stop talking so you can get to it.
All right. Well, hey, you know layout too, so you chime in anytime you need to. If I'm doing something and you do it a different way, that's what I love about SketchUp. What I love about layout is that we all kind of do it our own way and we kind of customize it and make it work for us. So what I'm sharing works for me, but hey, let's see how it connects to your workflow. That's the most important thing. And I would love also, Aaron, go ahead and be that dissenting voice. If you say, hey, that wouldn't work for me and here's why, let me know.
I'll focus my inner Jody and do my best to tear you down as you go.
Yeah, that's what we do here. That's what we do here on this team.
With love.
Yeah.
Tear you down with love.
Yeah. Well, what we do is we break down and we build ourselves back up even stronger. We're like phoenixes here on this in the SketchUp group. On that note, talking about tearing things down and building them back up, I think that was unintentionally a perfect segue. So this was a project that, if you've seen this before, I'm going to plug it in at the end. But if you've taken our campus course, actually, I'm going to plug it now, but I'm going to plug it again at the end because that's how much I love our campus stuff, our campus content. It's called Design Package in Layout. So this is that sort of reference model, and we go through the whole process in very clear step-by-step detail. So for those of you who have taken this, that's great. Hopefully you'll still get something out of today's stream. We're going to mix it up a little bit, but for those that haven't taken that course, that's where this is coming from. That's what this reference model was. So the inspiration for this was during COVID. I don't know about you, but I was working from home like a lot of people, and I was staring at my garage at the time. I'd moved since, but I was staring at my garage and thinking, wouldn't this be cool to not just be an ugly, gross, garage just with spiders and stuff? Like, what can we do with this? So of course, SketchUp and Layout were the tool for that job. So yeah, that was it. That's the premise. Was just how might we turn this underutilized space that's just literally wasting space into something that could be a home studio or maybe an Airbnb unit, get some extra money. Who knows? I thought it was relevant. It's still relevant. Even though it's post-COVID, it's still relevant.
Stories don't have to be long and lengthy. It could be short and sweet and like, yeah, let's do this. Okay, we're doing it. That's good enough. That's good enough reason.
Yep. That's Aaron's cue for saying just stop talking. and go for it. Thank you. Well, let's do it. So when I go turn on, I have not set up this model for, I haven't set it up for layout. I'm going to do that with you, but I did set up some tags. And so really quickly, if I turn on my color by tag and sort of go into X-ray mode, I had to think about it in a few different ways. Number one was the context. So if I wanted to turn off the context and look just at the building that we're working on, just the garage structure, I could, very quickly and easily do that. So that's all that yellow stuff. The second thing is all the stuff that's going to be demoed. So thinking about a design, if you're going to punch some windows in, a door, a skylight, the garage door that maybe would need to be replaced or upgraded. So these are all the things that are going to be removed. And so not only are they on their own tags, but they're all given the same color in color by tag. So it's really easy for me to actually stay organized, as all that stuff needs to go. So if I turn those off here, if I turn my Ds off, and then there you go. So this is just kind of the starting of, it's just making sure that everything is sort of set up properly. So when we get into layout, it's just really simple to use the tag override feature to be able to turn things on and off. So I don't need to have scene states saved over and over and over again. Do you, now Aaron, do you use tag folders, or do you, how do you, when you have a lot of tags, I know you don't always do tags in these live streams. In fact, I don't know if you ever do tags in live streams.
There's probably a person or two on here who wishes I did a little better on my maintenance, my tagging. I think tag folders are awesome. I don't use them as often as I should, though.
Okay. So the reason why I'm not using them, I didn't use them on this effort because it would make sense if you have all these, why not just put all the proposed stuff into a tag folder? But layout right now, at least currently, doesn't recognize them. So it's almost like you was doing all this work. And instead, I felt like putting the little P for proposed in front of it will make it so I can find it in layout really easily. So these are all my proposed stuff. So this is the proposed design. And all the white stuff here, these are all the existing things that are going to remain. So the existing structure. So that's it.
I do like that, the way that you set a bunch of your tags the same color, so switching to color by tag instantly gives you just a layout of what's happening, or a layout, an overview of what's happening. I think that's great. I mean, I've done that, 1, 2, or 3 characters at the beginning to tag something as a specific type, but the colors, that's great. That's a good tip.
And on that note, I'll stop there, but I'll say that because we're going into layout, I'm not using, I'm probably going to be showing it like this. If you think about it, for a construction document set, I'm probably going to want to be black and white. Imagine printing off a Xerox copy set. Expensive color copies are expensive. The other thing to me, I kind of like the kind of CAD hardline. So anyway, you're right. When I go to color by tag mode, that's kind of a way to just kind of override those colors, but we're going to override them by using hidden line style. So let's get into it. Let's think about what we need to do before we get into layout. I think we need to think about what we want to communicate. So first thing I want to do is communicate what it looks like now, the existing structure. So that would be plan, elevation, and perspective, or plan, section, and perspective. So that means we're going to need to cut some sections, and we're going to need to save those to a scene, because those, unfortunately, unlike tags where you can override them in layout, I have to actually have a section cut activated and stored to a scene so that layout can pull it later. So let's do that first. Let's cut some sections, if that works for you. I'm going to ask Aaron, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions if it works for you, because if it doesn't, then I want you to tell me.
Sounds good.
That doesn't work for you.
I like it.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn everything on, because right now I don't really care. I'm going to go in later and worry about tags and layout. So I'm not going to worry about that here. Let's do it. So tools, section plane, talk to myself while I do this. I want to, let's see, I want to just kind of cut a section for each of the area. I do want to, however, while I'm in SketchUp, I do want to make sure that I'm working with my styles. So I will just kind of take a quick detour and say I want to do section fills, and I don't like the red section lines. So yeah, there's that. And then the section fill, maybe I'll make that like a lighter color. Maybe make that like a lighter gray, not so dark. How's that? Does that look all right? Okay.
That's nice.
And then I also want to, in this style, make sure that I'm not showing the section planes. So I do want to see them right now, but I don't want them in the style. And I'm going to go ahead and save that just right now as a scene, and I'm going to change it. I'm just going to call this section for now, and then we'll set those. So this section is going to be, let's see here, if I go to plan view, should have started in plan view. If I go to plan view, this section would be facing south. So I'm going to call this one south. This is kind of like, for me, I kind of like getting in to the, I kind of like this process. I hope it's interesting at home because I know that some of this is repetitious. And a lot of people are looking for ways to automate this process, but I don't know, it doesn't bother me. I kind of enjoy it.
This is Eric's version of my hand stitching geometry together, where I find Zen moments in it. He likes to do this, set up layout scenes just to relax. So Eric, question: those planes, those rectangles floating above your garage there?
Yes.
What are those?
Yes, I'll get to those. Those are area takeoffs. Now, because what I did was, when we get to the end, I want to do a little calculation so I can send it to Excel. But I wanted just generally like what is concrete, how much is wood decking, what is bathroom tile. So all I did was just take the faces, and I'll explain more. But yeah, I just took the faces of the different materials and I just copied them up. And you'll see why, because it's actually easier to do it as a single plane separate from the model than it is to try and go in, because then you're dealing with volume and you're dealing with these other things. So there's a little bit of method to this madness. This is west. Go ahead.
Nope. As you carry on cutting your sections, we had a question on YouTube. Faris Jawad asked if you thought layout was okay for large projects.
Yes, I'm doing a residential project. I think this is what layout kind of does. I'll be honest and say it probably does the house scale stuff better, just because the reason why is you have more smaller teams. It's less about what layout handles. It's more about how big your team is. So if you're working in a big firm with hundreds and hundreds of people, chances are you're not using layout. You're going to be using more, you're going to be a CAD or a Revit kind of company if you're a big company. So it's less about what layout handles and more about like how you work. But there's no reason why you can't use this for a bigger project.
Perfect.
And that last one is, I'm slow because when I talk and work at the same time. So I want to do one more, and I need to do a section plane, and it's going to be facing down because I need a plan view as well. And so you can do two things. You can toggle the roof on and off by giving it its own tag, or if you actually want like the section cut lines, like you want to actually cut through, then it might make sense that I cut through. Like in this case, I need the section cut through because I want to see the walls. Do you know what I mean? Like when you cut into like a window, you get that, you just get sort of a different aesthetic when you're cutting into things. So I have to decide. I want to cut into, I want to see, where am I cutting? I want to cut into, how about we cut into my upper cabinets? Yeah.
That'll teach those cabinets a thing or two.
Yeah, I'm going to cut into my cabinets, but I want to cut into my window, but I don't want to cut into like the refrigerator. So I kind of want to cut above that. So let's go ahead and add that as a plan view. And I know that it's not actually a plan view, but I'm going to go through and do those in just a second. So let's actually do that now. I should have just done this in parallel projection mode. So this is, I don't really care where, I don't care how zoomed in I am, because I'm going to set the scale here shortly in layout. So what I'm going to do is update that.
Something I want to call out, because you're doing it right now. One of the things, well, this is because it's sections, but one of the things people ask about a lot is, layout changed a few versions ago where you can create your own views a lot easier now than you used to, right? Because there was a time there where you had to have your scenes locked down in SketchUp before you went to layout, and that's not necessarily the case. But I still find, I'm asking this because I want to have your input. I still find that I prefer to, just because the tools are there, it's easier to set up my views, have all of my views locked in SketchUp before I go to layout. Do you find that too, Eric?
Yes and no. Yes, in that you need your views set, but not all of them. And the reason why you need them set up first is because, like what I said, is you're keying into sections. You need to make sure an active section is cut. You're keying into things like, I'll give you an example. This is where we're going next. So it's a great question. What we're doing here is you'll notice that I'm not paying attention to my tags. So what I want to do is I want to show the before, which is the existing, and then I want to show the proposed. So that way, if I was getting it costed or something, or if I was showing how I changed the design, that would be really easy. It would be apparent, readily apparent. Now, but you notice that I'm not setting up a south section for existing and a south section for proposed. I'm just doing a south section. So in this way, yes, I'm setting up, you do need to set some stuff up in SketchUp, but you don't have to set everything up. Hope that answered that question.
Yeah. So you're using the best of both worlds, basically.
Yes, we're using like a lot of things. I think when someone says, oh, this doesn't really work for me or something, I'm struggling with something, it's like, what it means is that oftentimes we have tools that are sort of best for the job. So it's kind of like, the more we can kind of pre-think what we need and what will work for us. Hang on, I want to find, there we go. Okay. Then the more we can just use the right tool. I want to set up a section. I do want to set up, speaking of which, I do want a perspective or two. So this is kind of showing it looking through the garage. And I think that's kind of cool. So I'll double check my eye height there, which should be something more like 5 foot. And I'm going to go 2 point, I'm going to leave that perspective. Because it's a small space, I opened up the field of view to 50, which is a little bit wider than SketchUp's default 35. And I'm going to add that as a perspective. I'm going to call this perspective 01. Perspective, how do I spell perspective 01?
Just spell it wrong and then laugh about it afterwards.
Aaron and I do things really differently, by the way. You can see with his commenting that he would handle this whole thing completely different, but that's okay.
That's one of the great things about what our live lineup has grown into. We definitely got multiple voices, got different talent. It's a great thing to get to see. I wanted to call out Sam Valdez over on YouTube, has said he's currently working on a 13,000 square foot home in LayOut. And he's giving props to LayOut 2023 being much better than previous versions.
Yes, and when we get into LayOut, we'll talk a little bit about some of those differences. A lot of them are under the hood. So you'll look at things like, I'm going to save this, by the way. So for those that didn't call me out on that, this is probably a good time once I've done a certain amount of work. One thing I want to note too is that, a lot like LayOut, there's a lot of like little changes, but they make a big difference. Like when we add a new auto text feature, or when we increase the performance pipeline, those are things that maybe aren't readily apparent, but that really helps our workflow. So I'm going to toggle through these really quick, just make sure that they're all cut. One thing I do need to do is I do need to make sure that I'm cutting through the building. So if I'm cutting through. I just want to make sure that I'm cutting through. I don't want to cut through a car. I'm going to get rid of that car anyway, but I need to make sure. Because that's one thing. That's one thing. Was that bothering you? That's one thing I can't do in LayOut is that I can't change where the cut occurs, right? Because that's coming from SketchUp. So this is to go back and sort of reinforce that point. Not only am I setting these up in SketchUp first, but I want to make sure that I want to make sure that they're the right cuts. And you can also, at this point in time, anything that has to do with SketchUp geometry. So if I didn't want that tub because it's weird to cut through this tub, I could hide it just in this scene, and then I would update that scene and I wouldn't see it in LayOut. Because the only other way to control that would be to have that tub on its own tag, and I don't. I don't really want to do that.
Which is like I was saying, this is where you have that. That's the kind of granular control that you have in SketchUp that you don't have. If you want to, like you're saying, pan, set scale, turn a tag on or off, you can do that over there. But like hiding individual items, that kind of stuff is definitely something you want to fine tune when you're over here in SketchUp.
Yeah, like this case here, that one looks good. Okay, so I'm going to call it. It's okay if they're not perfect. The nice thing is that there's a live link between the two. So if we want to go back and say this isn't working, let's change it. We'll just make a quick update and it'll auto refresh. So I want to keep this show moving. But one thing I need to think about too is just pre-thinking. I have a package that I've already sort of done this process, but I don't want to show you that because that feels like it would take the fun out of it. So what I might want to do is do an axonometric, and then we're going to call it. How does that sound? So what I want to do
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to you.
Let me ask some people in the chat, though. Hold on.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding. You go for it.
I'm going to do, sorry, when I say axonometric, what I might mean is just like a bird's eye. I don't know. What do you think? It's not really that interesting from the air, but I did do, I did kind of show it from the air anyway, just because what it does is it provides context. So I am going to create an aerial here, and that's really just for, it's not really needed, but aerial, air. So how are we doing on time? Okay, we're only 20 minutes in. My goal is to spend about half an hour in SketchUp and then an hour and a half in Layout. So I'm doing great.
I will scream into the microphone when your time is up.
Please
Sound fair?
Yeah. Yes, please do that. If you're looking at this symbol here, I should call that out if you're wondering why I have like a disk in my tree. And that's because when we get to plan view, it may or may not be important to show, you can't see it here because of the section cut, because I'm cutting it. So what I'm gonna do is really quickly bring this down. So this is a 2D symbol. It depends on how you do your section cuts. I could do them inside of the house, the inside of the garage itself, and therefore it would only be cutting the garage. It wouldn't be cutting any of the context. So if that bugs me really bad, I would just copy that section cut, go into the garage group, paste it there, and it wouldn't cut anything else. But in this case, I think this is fine for me just to bring that symbol, maybe just bring that symbol down. You're gonna see here in just a second if I do this right. Go back to plan view. So if you are doing like, in Layout, you can always use a scrapbook tree and bring it in, but if it's, because it's existing, it shouldn't move. But if it's a proposed plan, you probably want to keep it tied to the tree component. Because if you move the tree here, like for example, if I found out this was in the wrong place and that tree actually needed to be, shift over a little bit, I could do that like by going over 1 foot. There we go.
So it's not a tree trampoline.
No, it's a tree symbol. So when I go to do my plan view, I would turn off, I would come over here to existing, and what you would do is turn off the 3D tree. So you can't see it because I'm cutting into it, but it looks like I just hacked my tree down. So there we go. So in this case, what I would do is I've got a 2D symbol on its own tag, and I have a 3D tree on its own tag. Maybe it helps to see it in color, because the reason why is because this tree here in Layout as a construction document kind of thing, I don't really want to see, first of all, a high poly tree. I don't want to take any chances of hit on performance, but I also don't want, it doesn't look as good. It's just messy. Like in plan view, I'll show you in plan view, to be honest with you, it's just, you can't see what's underneath it, can't see the fence, can't see the property line. It's not worth it to bring all that geometry into Layout. So that's why I turn that tree off. And I have a little tree symbol. So whether you want to do that in Layout or whether you do that again in SketchUp here, totally up to you. Little trick.
This is the perfect example of modeling for what you're actually creating, right?
Because, and if after you've done this enough times, you just know that that's not going to work for me. It's worth the 2 seconds that it takes to create a circle and embed that into the tree component than it would be to go in and find out in Layout that doesn't look good, or maybe it's affecting performance. So let's do it. Let's set up our document. Let's go into, I'm 7 minutes early. I'm ahead of time. We could spend some time in SketchUp, or we could just go early into Layout. I
got a question for you, Eric.
Yeah.
I'm going to take advantage of those 7 minutes and waste them. Make the most of them. Let's say somebody here's watching this and you're doing an awesome job training, but they're like, oh, I want to learn more about Layout. I haven't really used it. I really don't understand it. What would you do if you were them?
Well, if you missed my plug at the beginning and you came in a little late, then I'm going to do it again, and I'll do it once more at the end. So we have over at learn.sketchup.com is our great courses on Layout. We have two. We have this one that I'm doing now. So I'm kind of giving you the high level version of it. We're going to kind of just focus on the key aspects, and we're going to kind of go a little bit quicker because we only have 90 minutes once we get into Layout. And then if you go deeper into our campus site, we actually have what's called Layout Essentials. And even though this one was recorded on a previous version of Layout, most of that core functionality of how setting up a document works and what the basic tools are in the interface for somebody who's literally never opened Layout before, I would suggest starting with Layout Essentials. And then once you kind of have the basics down, move on to creating a conceptual document package. And even if you don't follow step by step, even just by opening up the Layout file and kind of and looking at it, because I give you all these files, that'd be great. The last thing I'll do is plug, and I've got Aaron here, so you guys will probably already know if you see us here on YouTube. We do keep layout stuff coming every, what would you say, Aaron? We don't do layout. We do like maybe every third week or something. We'll put out a layout video.
I'd say at least once a month you get a layout video on our YouTube channel.
Okay. So anyway,
right?
yeah. So subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already, and you're going to get that in your feed. It'll tell you what's coming. And then 2 times a week we push out videos, and about a third of those are going to be layout related. So it depends on how you like to get to digest your content. Right. I'm going to open up. Speaking of digesting content, I did a live stream not too long ago on setting up a layout concept template. So this is a template that I built because I'm used to the way InDesign looks, and you can see I've already got all my views and stuff already set up. So in a way, it's almost like if you like to work a certain way in layout, or you work for a company and you need to use a certain title block and you know that you only cut certain sections, do some of that pre-thinking, build it into a template. I'm not going to go into that detail about how I created this template and doing auto text, because that stream is already on our channel. So for those that missed that stream, I recommend going back when you have time, watch that one, and I'll go through all the details of working with auto text and setting up, saving your own custom template. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to see. Hopefully this works. Maybe it won't. We'll see. We're just rolling with it here.
I love that attitude, Eric.
We're gonna do it. Okay. So what I need to do is make sure that I know where I saved my SketchUp model to. So sorry. Let me go back here and make sure that I saved it to I think I'm working on my desktop. There it is. It should be there on my desktop. Let me save that again. And the reason why is because I want to make sure that I've got this file that we just created together as the file that we're going to bring into to lay out together. So if I go to my desktop files, I should see this one. So there's 2 ways to do it. I'm going to back up a bit. For those that want a speedier process, you can go File, Send to Layout. And what it'll do is it'll just send it straight. It's kind of cool because it already links the model and it puts it on a page. But for me in this case, sometimes that's okay. But for me, I almost like doing maybe a little bit of work in layout first, and then I'll bring the document in when I'm ready. So in this case, excuse me, this will almost like force you to set up a document from the very beginning, and your model will be in there. It'll just it'll put it in there for you, which is kind of nice for people who like to work that way. I'm going to drag and drop mine though. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to leave this blank page. And the way I set my template up is that I start with a plan view. I've got a placeholder file in there. If I wanted to, I could just replace my file with this placeholder file, but I don't want to go there today. I feel like maybe we'll mess some stuff up. So I'm just going to drag my SketchUp model in, and it's kind of a large file. So, that's me, because I put all this heavy entourage. It's about 1 million polygons. So if there's any delay or anything like that, it's because I kind of maybe got a little carried away with putting books on the bookshelf and all that fun stuff.
Hey, just want to give you props, Eric. You're getting shout outs for your custom templates video in chat right now. Oh, thanks everyone. I appreciate it. That one was I think it's important, but then again, I think everything in SketchUp, it's hard to, and layout is important, but it is. It's a good thing to know how to do. So speaking of good thing to know how to do is setting a scale. So right now I just drag this in, and it remembers the last, I've got it set to my plan scene here. So I'm on my plan scene. So it's kind of cool because it's already cutting through. And then what I want to do is set a scale. So under here, it says current scale. If you look, I can't really zoom in, but you guys can see it's above my head here. It says it's a random scale because it comes in just not to scale. I have to choose a scale. I don't know what the right scale is. I'm going to just kind of guess that because we're working on just a garage and not even a whole house, it's going to trend towards more like a smaller scale. I'm going to try 1/2 inch equals 1 foot and see what that looks like. I think that's too big. I think we're going to need to kind of go a little smaller than that. Aaron, do you ever use an actual scale anymore these days? I know you used to, right? When you were back in your framing days. I have like an actual scale. I have 2 or 3 triangular scales somewhere in my office because, I lived and died by those working off of paper plans. But Yeah, it seems like an obscure concept now because I don't know how often, I think it's less and less often that pages or papers even used in this kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I remember when I was first learning how like scale works, my brain like broke. I was like, they were explaining it in AutoCAD, and I was like, how to do a plot sheet setup, and I was like, dude, stop, it hurts. The Which is funny because then like now I'm expecting everybody else just to get it instantly, and I was like, it took me forever to get it. So yeah.
Oh, I got scale. And so if we want to talk about like time changes, like international time date line, that liquefies my brain.
Now, speaking of, since I've got a co-host here who's got some architectural background, you tell me what scale we should use. Now, this is 3/8 inch, Aaron. It's nice because you can see a lot of detail. It takes up the whole page. But my concern is that if we were to put any notes off to the side or even the dimension strings, I'm worried that we're maybe getting too close to the edge of the paper. What would you say? I'm going to go to the next one down, and I want you to.
Absolutely. I think it is you're definitely crowding the
I'm
page,
crowding the
especially if
page.
there's anything else on there. That looks better.
Does that look better?
Gives you room for a couple strings of dimensions. Yeah, your notes, that looks much better.
In fact, this first one I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go even smaller. I want to do this first one at say 1 inch equals 1/8 inch. And the reason why is because what I want to do is do like a context plan. So what I'm used to doing is in InDesign, which is why I'm trying to tell myself not to do this, is I double click into an image and then you can frame it. But in this case, it works a little bit differently. If I wanted to center the bounding box, I would not go into the model, because if you go into the model, you're going to rotate it. You can act like I'll show you here.
Right.
If I double click into this, I'm going to actually be in the SketchUp model, and you can see I could accidentally reposition. I mean, that's kind of cool if you wanted to just eyeball it. But for me, it's like, no, I don't want to just eyeball it. I really wanted, I want it a certain way. So in that case, what I'm doing is being careful not to double click into the view. I'm actually just using the bounding box around the sides to kind of position it. So this is going to be my context plan. What's cool about using auto text here is I've already set up my template. So it says page name. Here, I'll move this away from the comments a little bit. I'll move this up. See how it says page name? So all I have to do is come over here to this plan view, and I'll say context plan. And then when I do that, what it'll do is, sorry, I have to get out of there, and you'll see that the page name automatically updates. So that's actually kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is duplicate that page, and this time I'm going to call this site plan, or I'm going to call this garage plan, or detailed plan. You call it whatever you want. Garage plan. So this page here should say, I don't know why it's kind of being slow, probably because I'm streaming, and every time you stream, stuff doesn't work the way that you want it to.
Murphy shows up and it all falls apart, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I always blame OBS. Poor OBS, because like we really rely on OBS, and it's really is great for what it does, but then sometimes you're just like, it's got to be OBS's fault.
Yeah, it's the linchpin, but then it's also very much responsible for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, okay, I don't have to get this perfect. You guys get the idea. We're going to move on, but I do want to pop over to my blank page here, and maybe I want to say something about this. So I'm just going to grab some text really quick. I'm going to grab a north arrow, maybe a legend item, and then I'm going to pop back. That's why I put all this, I just dumped all this stuff into a blank page, is so that if I wanted to kind of give a little story about this, I could just write, the context of this house, this property is, such and such. And then the only problem is that these are auto-numbered, so they're remembering the sequence. So I would want to, at this point, go back in and delete these ones, which is kind of maybe I set those up wrong. It's not updating. That's okay. I don't need to use that. This is what we do when it doesn't work. You just say, I don't need to number those right now. Right, Aaron?
That's right. You know what I'm going to do instead? That's what you just throw that out.
Yeah. You just roll with it. See, I called it out. I called my mistake out, but you just make it look intentional and just be like.
That's the kind of honesty and transparency we like to pride ourselves here on our channel. Is just so something didn't go wrong and we know it.
I pre-populated some scales. This is 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. So I'm going to pop over here. Do I have a 1/8 inch? Yes, 1/8 inch. So great. See, it's almost like I've done this before. So what I'm going to do is, because this is 1/8 inch, I've already got a scale bar in my plan. Now I'm going to plug scrapbooks. So I want to say that when I set this stuff up, I don't want to give any indication that scrapbooks aren't completely useful. But there's 2 reasons why you may not want to use the scrapbook, which is number one, is if things are in different places, it just takes that extra bit of time to go find it, because they're laid out the way the scrapbooks have been set up. So it may or may not be easy to remember where everything is and then go back. And was it the contemporary one that I liked? And was it on the line? Was it on the section elevations? So the more you use it, probably the more you know where things are. But in this case, I could just create my own scrapbook, my own custom scrapbook, or I could just put stuff in like a blank page on my template. So I want to do a little shout out to scrapbooks there, because they're awesome.
I was just going to say that if you're doing any kind of repetitive work in layout, learn scrapbooks. There's a couple videos up on our channel. The thing about scrapbooks is all they are is layout files. They're layout files that are tucked aside, and you can just drag pieces off of them. So you can create anything you're going to put in your layout file more than once. Consider putting it into a scrapbook.
Yes, do that. So this is where I could keep going and set up my document, or depending on how long, it may actually make more sense that I spend a few minutes making sure my tags are correct. And you'll see why in a second, because what I would do in this case is, you'll notice that when I did not spend the time to go into SketchUp and say, I want my existing conditions. You see, like I have a car in the studio, in the apartment, that would not work, but that's because I knew that I was going to do that in layout. So I'm going to go over to layout here, and I'm going to use this lovely, amazing, and I will say it has been around for a while, but when I first started using layout a long time ago, you couldn't do this, which is opening up this under your SketchUp model window. I'll just pull that off to the side so you can see that, so you see which one. I'm in my SketchUp model window, and then under tags, there's this rollout where you can override. So when you have your SketchUp model selected, I could come over here and take everything that's D related, D means demo, and just untag those. Now remember what I said, there's no tag folders, so that's why I put that D in there, because then all my Ds are in the same place in layout. That may not work if you're an architect and all your layers are coming from, some of your layers are coming from CAD, where everything already has A and already has MEP or X. So just think about that. It may not work for your workflow, but for me in this case, it's just me. It's just me playing around, having fun. So I want to leave the existing stuff. I could take the context out if I wanted to. If I didn't want the fence and the context and stuff, I could just pull all of that out. Let's see what that looks like. I probably at minimum want to put the property line on, and possibly the fence line, which is just because that shows that this doesn't just go bleed out into outer space. Okay, so you get it. That's it. So the nice thing about this is that we can take this one, because now this is all my proposed stuff. So what I might want to do in this case is go and I may want to actually come into the name of my pages. Oh, that's going to mess me up. I have to put this back where it belongs. I have to put baby back in the corner.
Oh, danger.
Yeah. That was a Dirty Dancing reference, if anyone.
Yeah. Sorry, dated all you young kids on here today.
That's the problem with like teaching kids these days, is that like all of my ways to relate to them like are films up to like 2004. And so like I think those are still relevant when I quote something like from She's All That with Freddie Prinze Jr. And they're like, who's Freddie Prinze Jr.?
Ouch.
Ouch. Freddie, if you're out there, you know. My point here, what I was trying to do was actually say, I want to copy this, because even though it only took me a couple of seconds to turn those tags off, I want to now set up my sections. So what I'm going to do is come over to my page that says West Elevation, and I'm going to get rid of that placeholder. That was in there to help me, but hey,
That's just left over from your template, right? You're saying
that's exactly, that's another way to do it, is that you can just put your SketchUp model into that placeholder file and it would pre-populate. But in this case, actually, it's almost, I would rather do this with you from scratch. So just a note that if you turn sorry, I could just do this. I could just do it instead of talk about it. It's probably the way Aaron prefers. my teaching brain says that like I have to call out everything I'm doing, because like you'll notice that if on this page, if you have your guides layer turned on, it remembers that. And if you go to a page and you turn your guides layer off, it remembers that. So just letting you know that if you want your guides on all the time, you just make sure not to turn it off, because as soon as you turn it off, they'll disappear.
They're gone.
All right. So
that's funny you mentioned that, because the training methodology, I remember being advised once by a person who was significantly older than myself on how I should train. And he said there is a 5-step process. You tell somebody what you're going to show them, you show them, then you tell them what you just showed them, then you have them tell you what they're, and it was like, I think it was 7 steps, he said, is the process you need to go through. And I've always been a big fan of, I'm going to show you and then give it a shot and let me know what you think.
I like that. So, hey, Aaron, here's a question for you. I did not turn my sky off in SketchUp. Now, I know that if I turn it into, if I switch from raster to vector, let's see, or hybrid, let's see what happens. Then what it'll do, it'll knock out, vector will knock out that sky, because it's only dealing with line work. And so it gets rid of all that extra stuff like fog, any effects or anything that you would have. It's not going to show it in vector.
Right. And styles is one of the things that you can't mess with when you're inside of layout. That's one of those things you want to fine tune. We were talking about, what do you fine tune and what do you let layout to, and styles is one of those, because
styles is one of those. Yeah, you can't
adjust styles once you get in layout.
Yeah, a little bit, I think, but not a lot. You're right. There's a few things you have limited control. So you do want to make sure that you've kind of thought about it. So what I'm going to do is turn the sky off and make sure that I've updated my style here. And then when I come over here and flip, because I use the same style on all of these, that sky won't show. Because, I mean, this is just me. It's an aesthetic thing. I just want it to look like a CAD, almost like a CAD file, like a blueprint. So just turn that sky off. But if you want that, if you want those colors and textures and skies and all that fun stuff in your drawing, then of course, set up your style however you want. Like you can see, I'm on hidden line. So I do have colors. I do actually have materials and things, but personally, I just like the black and white aesthetic. So that's what I'm going to go with. So let me go.
And it should probably be, I'm just going to point this out because I always forget this, but if you do hop over to SketchUp and make changes, make sure you hit save.
Yep,
because
that's what
it doesn't matter how many times you go to layout and say update. If you didn't save your SketchUp file, it won't update. No matter how hard you click either. It's really hard, it still doesn't do it.
So speaking of update, there's a couple ways to do that. Sometimes for me, it auto updates, and I think that's what it's supposed to do. But other times you have to just right click. If it doesn't auto update, you just right click it and say update model reference. Not a big deal. It takes a second. And then what you should see, if I did this right, yep, I always cross my fingers because you never know when you're live. If I did this right, then it'll update. And you can see my cut line, because I'm showing the concrete foundation, should go there.
There are people who will strongly advocate both for and against auto anything. So that's something else to consider. Like if as you're doing this, do you want to let it decide when changes have been made and then go through and update everything? And I guess that also comes down to how many pages you have, how many model boxes you have. That's probably a preference thing.
Yeah, I actually, for those that don't know me, I do tend to like to control things a little bit more than others. So when I don't mind it sort of telling me, of making that manual connection of refreshing, and that's okay. So I'm going to do this. Now I could do a couple of things. I could just duplicate this page. I have some pages set up in my template, but I almost think it's more work to edit those than it is to duplicate the one I've already done. So I'm going to dump those. So you can see once I have one section done, and I'm not even done here. Like what I would want to do is if I may go in and annotate. And in this case, actually, for this one, this is funny. This one's actually not done because what I want to do on this one is turn the roof. If I open up my tags again, where is my SketchUp? Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you go into my tag override, I was trying to be smart and I put the existing roof on two different, I had the front of the roof and the back of the roof. So what I could do is I could turn that off, and I could turn the proposed, in this case, the proposed skylights off, because then what I would be doing is I'm cutting through, do you know what I mean? Like, because it's a pitched roof. So when I do that section cut, the only way to get around that would be to put another section cut in, but it's actually less work to just turn the roof off than it would be to add an additional section cut. And you'll notice this is not a solid, for those that are wondering why like this wall has a section fill and this one doesn't. It's because for some reason when I built this, I must have screwed up, or I was in a hurry, because it's not a solid. So if I just come in here and with my rectangle tool, I can easily just sort of fake it, pretend like that wasn't a thing. Or I could go into SketchUp and build it properly, build my model, the right way. If my head is, sorry, Aaron, if my head is blocking something that I'm pointing to, let me know, because I don't look really at myself when I'm doing this. Because like
you're just tucked in the wrong corner.
Here, you know what I'm gonna do is
move you. Yeah. You're gonna move you, or you're gonna shrink you.
Yeah, I'm gonna move me. I think it's worth it. Don't you think?
This is the kind of control we have. Like this.
Yeah.
This is pretty. Yeah.
Technology, folks. Technology, folks. Hey, is that better? That's better. I think.
Yeah. There we go.
I wish you would have said that sooner, but that's okay. Better than later.
Well, technically, I never said anything. This was. I was just here for you having a conversation with you. It all worked out good in the end.
You're here so that I don't sound crazy talking to myself for 2 straight hours. No,
well, good thing I remembered to unmute myself then.
You're here for a lot of reasons. You relay the comments from the chat. I can't do that.
That's right. And there is a conversation going on about Freddie Prinze you would be proud of. So.
Oh, yeah, forget talking about layout from now on. We're going to talk about name all of Freddie Prinze movies, and do not look it up. It's from memory. All right, I'll give you one. I Know What You Did Last Summer, part 1 and part 2. That's a freebie. Go with it.
Scooby-Doo's on here too. I don't know if you're. His more recent work. That's like my kids' childhood was the live action Scooby-Doo movies.
So where I was with this, I'm going to get to annotation, and we're almost done. So with the page setup. So for those that I'm going to shrink our chat a little bit. Sorry, folks, for the chat. Speaking of control, I love having you, and I keep the chat coming, but I'm just going to kind of shift you over a little bit. Okay. So what I want to do is, what I said was, instead of copying this and then putting it into my template that was already set up, because I have a bunch of stuff like lines, and if I have annotations and scales and things like that, what I may want to do instead is just duplicate that page. And what it's going to do is it's going to change the page name. So all I have to do is, I'm not going to enter it in here because that's auto text. I'm just going to change the page name to, I'm going to call this one Section East. And then I'll go over to my tag, and if I'm smart about how I set up my scenes, if I was smart, then I would label it the right label. And it's okay that it came in a little bit shifted. That's just as easy as using the arrow keys to kind of push that back in place. So that's my east elevation, my section elevation. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn off the opposite side of the roof, which is roof there. And I'm also going to take the same thing here. I'm going to my poorly drawn wall. Sorry, wall.
I'm cracking up that your keylogger is showing all your arrow key movement.
Did you see that? It shows all of them. Yeah. It also shows when I turn my brightness up and down. It's actually kind of pretty because
Whoa,
I know, isn't that cool? It turns orange.
I need a new logger, so I may have to ask you which one you use.
This is Keycaster. It's free, I think, which is why I used it, because free is good, folks. So that's my east section. I'm going to do, in this next one here, I'm going to try combining these ones. Section, let's see, because this is the long view, and then there's a short view. So if I do this smartly, I can put 2 sections on the same page. Section, and then this is going to be north and south. So good old auto text. So in this case, what I'm going to do is, if this works, I'm going to put north on the left. This actually might not work, because if I actually may want that longer cut, and the reason why is because of the context. So if I wasn't doing the context, I may actually put them both on the same page. But if
You know what you need to do is you need to group that line with your drawing so you don't have to keep moving it around so much.
You mean you mean that little face that covers where I have bad modeling?
No, your little ground line that you go back in the sign, you keep moving your model and then you come back and drag it around so it lines
No.
up with that again.
Yes, because that line, I'm going to lock it. I'm going to do the opposite. I don't want this
All
line to
right.
move, right? Because, oh, you know what you could do is you could also put that on every page. That's
That's
okay.
true.
That's okay. No, because what I want to do is when I flip pages, I want I want that line to be in the same place, right?
I like that.
Right?
That's good thinking.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
great.
So I'm going to change this. If you want to take us, I'm just going to do a couple. This again, it's the same process. Aaron, if you feel the need to
So
go off on a
yeah,
little segue with
I got a
the
couple.
chat.
I got a couple shout outs I want to throw out there.
Yes,
We got
please
some
do.
events coming up. So chronological order. Anybody here in the chat from the Netherlands? Let's hear if you're here from the Netherlands, because coming up in, I believe it's October 13th, is 3D Basecamp Benelux in Eindhoven. So that's going to be pretty cool. And if you are near there and lucky enough to go, I just want to tell you that the dude doing the keynote is it's probably going to be pretty fun and worth listening to.
Is it you?
That's me, yeah. Anyhow, I'm going to be in in the Netherlands, in Eindhoven, October 13th, doing the keynote at Basecamp Benelux. And if you do listen and you do follow any of our stuff, it would be awesome to get to meet you. So please do show up. That'd be pretty cool. The other thing I want to throw out is Dimensions is coming up. That is Trimble Dimensions. And we are going to be there as well. If you're interested and haven't gotten it together to go buy a ticket or anything like that, we do have a code for you. If you use the term or the code SketchUp DIMS, all one word, that's SketchUpDims, SketchUp DIMS, then you can get, I think we calculated over 35% off your ticket. So
Yep.
check that out.
So, sorry, hang on. Can I, before I forget,
Bring it in.
I actually am teaching a 4 hours, a half day layout course. So it's going to be hands-on, in person, and that's going to be at Dimensions this year, so in Vegas. So I'll be there if that's worth anything, if that's worth, coming out.
Yeah, and throwing on top of that, we're actually doing some certification courses. So you could come learn from our team and get certified in SketchUp. So it'll be fun. It'll be cool. It'll be in Vegas. It'll still be fun and cool. Yeah, it'll be good. Had a couple questions come up during that about American base camps. American base camps are every 2 years. We just had one in 2022. So our next one won't be until 2024. So probably a little bit of time before we announce anything about that. We still got to get through 23 here, guys. Let's be honest. Let's get this year behind us before we start worrying about next year. As far as content from 3D Basecamp, we don't share the stuff that happens at Basecamp. The way to learn from what goes on at Basecamp is to come to Basecamp. So there is not a place to watch Basecamp 2022 as was asked on YouTube.
Got to be
And
there.
Transom's asking if I need any help in the Netherlands. Yeah, I'm probably have to figure out how to get from Amsterdam to Eindhoven. That's my biggest thing right now. I know it's about an hour and a half of travel between the two, and I haven't worked out how that's going to happen yet. So yeah, maybe. I figure people are nice out there. I'll get a ride or something.
They are
I should
nice.
probably make a better plan than that.
They are nice. I have not been to Amsterdam, so I'll have to live vicariously through you on that one.
Yeah, the Amsterdam portion of the trip will be brief, like flying in and then getting on a train or something. That's as much as I have planned in Amsterdam. So, but it'll be fun. I have not been to that part of the world before, so I'm looking forward to it.
I've got to think for a second.
Uh-oh. Sorry, wish I had a soundboard or something. I could play the Jeopardy theme.
What I'm thinking about solved it. What I did here was, I'm going to turn my guides off for this. I think I'm going to give a stroke on this one, but I'm going to keep it nice and thin. And the reason why is because sometimes I like the image. I like using the negative white space of the page, but other times I like to box it in so it feels like, this is separate from the page. In this case, I think you tell me, we can, if you agree. But what I want to do is this is why it's really important to have good organization, because I turned the garage door off. Now, even though the garage door is part of the design and it should be there, the only other way to do that would be to make sure that this perspective was taken inside of the space, which means I had to go inside of the garage. But if you do that, you lose so much of this context because it's such a small space. I mean, it's the size of a parking stall, right, and a half. Right. So in this case, what I did was I made the decision to take the view from outside of the garage and turn the garage off. So that's what's kind of cool about having that sort of set up. For those that I'm gonna excuse me. I'm going to kind of point out here for those, because I know it's going to come up, but firstly, I want to address that if someone doesn't like the way the pixelization looks in raster, I want to point out for those that don't know this, and it's worth talking about, I think it's in preferences. It's been a while since I've done this. But if you go, is it preferences or is it in document setup? I always mix those two up.
I think it's in document.
It's in document setup under paper. What's called display resolution. So by default, you have a medium display resolution. So when you see that pixelization, that's just a performance thing. You can change that if you want, but of course then, you're trading. You may trade that performance. So for me, I'm okay with that because I know my output is going to look better than what I'm seeing on the screen. And that's the other thing too, of course, I'm zooming in. So if you do zoom in, whether you're, unless you're vector, if you zoom in with vector, it won't pixelate, but then the question is, do you need to zoom in? So for me, I want to make sure that my output resolution is set to high, and my display resolution, I'm just going to leave it alone. And I'm just going to do a test really quick. And I just want to share with you that it looks better, excuse me, it looks better than you see here. So let's do that. This is page 4. So let's go up here and go export to the desktop. And I'm just going to call this page 4. And we're going to go options, high, make sure everything's as high as it can. And we just want to just keep this simple for now. Just do page 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Make sure that works. Click OK.
And this is a pretty basic tip for getting the most out of layout is show low quality on the screen, but export high quality.
I mean, you tell me, Aaron, because I'm looking at my screen, so I want to make sure that I'm not biased because it's like 3 inches from my face here. But I think this looks. If I go back here, I don't know. Maybe I can put them side by side. Do you see do you see the difference? It doesn't it to me. Sorry, don't do that. Stop touching layout. Don't touch it. Hands up. It looks a lot better.
It does. The one on the left looks like slightly out of focus. If that makes sense.
And it also looks like these lines are almost like broken with the curtains because it's very organic. It's high poly. But if you look over here, those lines are clean. I want to point that out because I do know that there's people who say, well, performance is an issue in layout when you're working in vector, which is a rendering mode where, of course, it's all vector. So if you need vector, first of all, you need to make sure that you ask yourself, do you need vector? And for me, most often the answer is no. The second thing is you need to know is what you're seeing on the screen and what you're outputting are not the same thing. So don't feel bad if something looks pixelated as you're working. That's great. That means you're being efficient. The third thing is that actually there's no third thing. Those are the only two things. Is that you just have to know whether you need the vector or not. And in this case, like for me to take the effort to vector all my plants and all my curtains and all the pots and all that stuff, it's just I'm not getting anything for that, and it wouldn't be worth the time. So I do want to point that out.
Well, and I want to point out that line work there's different, just like we talk about with SketchUp. What are you modeling for? What is this going to do? What purpose is it going to serve? So something like this, which is, I mean, a beautiful, it's a good looking image. It gives you a feel of the space, but nobody's going to come on here and pull a dimension off this to make anything. So light lines like that looks great in that situation. Whereas when you're doing something like your section drawings, where somebody might actually build off of them,
That's a good point.
then you want to be a little more intentional about your heavy lines and less question about where things are. Here, organic's okay. In an actual, like your plan view, you wouldn't want to have that.
And that's a good point, because what you may want to do here is, let me just come over here. You'll notice while Aaron was talking about Basecamp Benelux and all that fun stuff, I was making sure that when I added a section cut to my scene, I really should have duplicated that scene, because now what I'm doing is I'm cutting through places where I don't want to cut through. So I've actually went in and made sure that I have two styles set up and applied to the right scene, one with cuts and one without cuts. You can see this one has cuts, this one does not have cuts. Definitely wanted to make sure that I did that correctly. But my point of doing this is I want to go back. This is where you may want to go back into SketchUp. In this case, what I want to do is I'm going to turn the roof off for just a second. And, just look at things like, if I'm doing a construction set and it's more important that I have those vector edges, I might want to create a new tag, and I'm just going to call this P entourage, or you can call this P high poly, and the P is only because it's proposed. You don't need to do that in your model. But in this case, what I would do is come over here, and I'm using the color by tag mode so that it's really easy for me to see that I'm putting that onto. See how it changes colors? Let's make that even more noticeable by making that a color that is not in my model. So you may want to come in and just take all this kind of fun stuff that I think makes for a really cool perspective drawing, and it does, but it's really not necessary for like when you're telling a builder. In fact, it's almost maybe even distracting. Would you agree, Aaron, or would you do it a different way?
No, I agree with what you're saying. So, if it, I'm at odds with myself right now. Because I do like the idea of not necessarily everything being black and white, orthogonal, everything locked down. I think you can get a lot of good feel into drawings by, including some additional information, that kind of thing. But at the same time, too much can be distracting for sure.
So, and that's a good point. Yeah, you're right. Is that I'm maybe going a little too extreme by keeping things really monochromatic, but you may want to go in and have certain things show. So I'm taking everything out that would be considered furnishings. So something that you would not have, maybe necessarily. The builder would not cost a movable kitchen island. A builder would not cost your couch, your existing couch that I would.
Right.
Maybe put in, let's see here, wrong tag. Yeah, go ahead.
There's an argument to be made in a small space like this to show, how is this all going to fit? How is a queen bed going to fit into this little space? That's definitely worth having. But yeah, I agree that you don't want that to overwhelm the purpose of the drawings.
Yeah, so originally when I built this, I just kind of, put everything on the same tag. But I think in this case, what I may want to think about is turning all of the stuff off that might be things like, anything that's going to be like rugs and stuff like that. I would do that. Okay, so let's do that. Let's see here. What did I do here? Why is that? Oh, I see, because I turned it off. Good. Okay, so that's what's cool about color by tag mode. That was a little tangent, but that was a good one, because I think you brought up a good point, and we were talking about if you do want that clean edge, and you maybe do in a section cut, that might make the sense where you want to actually get not only the high poly stuff, but the stuff that maybe is less, I would say, secondary to the design, which would be like the furniture. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and see what that does. Let's pop over here. I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to make sure to update this. And then I want to get into, we're a little bit after the hour, so I do want to touch on adding some labels and some dimensions, and especially dimension strings, where if I make a change in SketchUp, like I move a wall or a column, and then that dimension string updates because it's tied to the SketchUp model. And so I want to kind of talk about the difference between dimensioning in paper space and dimensioning in model space. And I also want to talk about how labels can pull information. So if your model is really well organized, you can actually save yourself a ton of time by pulling information from the SketchUp model, and layouts tags will read them. So I wouldn't mind just talking about styling. So if we wanted to do, talk about some visual styles, or if we wanted to put in some hatches and some shapes and some pattern fills. Aaron, you tell me, because I want to make sure that I'm going to do what I think are the big moves, and then I think we're going to have some flexibility towards the end where we can make sure that everyone's comments and questions get incorporated.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, so get your questions in about layout, and we will try to hit them once.
Yep.
Eric,
I will save some time.
Nice.
So what I did was here, now I'm going to have a new group of tags. So if I open up my tag override here, you can see that I should have a new tag called entourage. So if I turned all that stuff off, it would look, again, it looks a little bare in the perspective view. I think the perspective views should both stay raster and should have all the entourage. So I'll put that sort of to bed, and let's move on to, why do I have, oh, I see. This one is perspective. And what are we calling this one? Back patio. This is my Zen patio. I'm going to call it Zen patio. Now, again, I didn't build this space. This is just me fantasizing during COVID. Had some extra time on my hands, and I thought, wow, that'd be really cool. That'd be really cool not only to have a space that's not your house to work, but also even a small patio space that's not your backyard. I have kids, so I don't know about you guys, but it's kind of nice to have a spot where you can go hide. Dad is hiding in the back corner again.
Some outside away space.
Yeah. So let's see what this looks like where I go in and I override and I turn that sort of entourage and stuff off. I probably have a few too many tags. I probably could have simplified it. But I think I agree, Aaron. I think I'm going to give you some props there. I think it looks better. Actually, it depends. You may want to show it with all this stuff, but maybe you want to show one that's more diagrammatic. You may want to show it in both ways. Or you just, or you don't. Now, you tell me. Oh, should we try? Should we go? Should we make this a hybrid and see what that does?
Ooh.
Should we do it?
Let's check it out.
Let's do it. I'm always worried about that stuff on live stuff because I like to do I like to keep things simple for a reason. So let's do that.
Well, it can be. I mean, you're nowhere near abusing layout right now, but
no,
it should be noted that switching types right here. If you have a big model, can take a second or two.
So that took about 3 seconds or 4 seconds. So that was actually pretty good. I was worried because I just worry. That's just me. That's just my personality. So let's move on. So that looks good. So that is now vector. So if you really wanted to zoom in that far, you could, and you wouldn't pixelate. So if you were thinking about enlarging your prints, maybe you created a document set 11 by 17, but you needed to print it a little bit larger. Definitely, in this case, if you're going to go larger, then exporting as a PDF or EPS or something like that would be a good idea. So let's move on. So you saw that wasn't too bad. Let's move on to some dimensioning. The other thing we could do, and then what we'll do is I want to make sure, because we asked the question about why did I have those area calcs. I want to do a quick area calc, and I want to import a spreadsheet. And when I say area calc, I'm talking very generic, which is how much square footage of concrete, how much is the wood deck, how many square foot of cabinets or linear feet of cabinets. And Aaron, this will be where I'll probably, because I don't know what I'm talking about here when it comes to actual construction. So I would love to lean in on your experience there.
I'll make things up for you. You got it.
Perfect. Okay, so what we need to do here is we need to add some labels. I think that's where we are in this. Oh, did you know, Aaron, you can change styles. You can override styles in layout though. So like you can see.
You can, but you can't edit styles.
Yes, you can't edit. So if I wanted to show a roof plan, I could do a roof plan and then have it not show the section cut. And if I wanted to show the section cut, I could do this. And I wanted to go back because this kind of bugs me, because let me show you why. It's because I'm cutting into the existing house structure and I'm cutting into the tree. And so one thing I want to do for this that I haven't done is I want to make sure that I'm turning all the proposed stuff off. So everything that's proposed should be turning off, And then the second thing I want to do in this case is come into context and make sure I'm turning my 2D tree off. Sorry, my 3D tree. So that looks a lot better. If this bugs you here, I think it's a good thing to learn. It's a teaching moment, So let me show you what I mean by that. So in the plan view, you can see if I toggle my section cuts, my section planes on, you can see that I did the section outside of the garage group, which means everything is getting cut. So what I may want to do for just that one is copy that, delete it, go into the house group, and then paste that in place. And then you can see the difference here if I go back to my plan view and I toggle my, let's see here, view, section cuts. The only thing you have to do is you have to activate it. So I want to make sure that that is the active cut. And there you go. So turn those off and update this scene. The reason why it's showing weird is because I have this layer here, which is called area. So I turn that off. There you go. So I don't know about you, if it looks better or not to have, this, because then that way this kind of looks like it's faded out. It's kind of like simpler. And then I put the attention, where it deserves. So let's see what that looks like back in layout. You got quiet on me, Aaron. Are you still there?
Yeah, I can't read and talk at the same time.
Oh, okay, good.
A long comment came in.
I was getting nervous. You made me nervous, so I'm glad you're still there.
The question came in about different hatches in section views. Do you recommend drafting on top of a layout viewport for hatching, or using something like a SketchUp section or extension? Excuse me, something like Scalp, I assume.
Yeah, I haven't used Scalp. I know that that's actually pretty powerful, and I think a lot of people swear by it. So I would probably say that's a good idea. I don't know why this didn't update. That's okay. We'll worry about it later. Let's put some hatches. Let's do that now. Actually, that's a great segue. This is my existing conditions plan. So this is just the context, and it's also giving some indication of like the garage as it stands now has this wood shelves and a washer and dryer that would need to be relocated. And of course the car, would just not park there anymore. It would just park on this driveway. But let's say let's do this. I'm going to use the line tool, and what you can decide whether you want to just draw it and then pattern it afterwards, or what you could do is, if you know which pattern you like, you could come over here to pattern fill, and let's go to tonal patterns. I don't know which one I want to do. Site patterns. I want to do something that feels like concrete. What would you say? Tonal?
Got a gray with a bunch of little white circles in it, or isn't there one that like just
like a concrete? I forget. That's my problem, is that if you don't use these a lot.
I think I used pattern fills in like the second version of layout, and I don't know that I've gone back for more. Not because there's anything wrong with it, just because I don't make a whole lot of sections that are filled in.
Yeah, I'm looking for one that's like a concrete symbol. So if anybody in the chat does use, here we go. Maybe it's in here. It's under materials, material symbols. This is where I think you're going to find more of like the common ones that you'd expect. So let's hope that gets me closer. So my point, what I was trying to make, is that if you select this and you select stroke, then what you can do is if you choose those first, then when you switch to your line tool, you can see that you're actually drawing exactly the pattern. So when I start drawing again, so what it does is it's going to remember that if I select it first. Otherwise, what you have to do is just draw like a placeholder and then go apply them afterwards. I think that's a little too thick of a stroke, though. Would you say? Maybe point.
Yeah, I generally,
or no stroke.
Like to keep
just let the line work show through.
My heavy strokes to things like you have right here. Your walls, like what are the things that need to stand out as being the things, I think that would go real light if any stroke on that.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. You don't want it thicker than, like, if you're cutting through a window or a wall or something like that.
Right.
Or like my concrete edge, you can see it actually matches the sort of the thickness of the line from my SketchUp model. And then this is a little planter box, which is too narrow to actually plant anything.
Which is, it's actually kind of cool to go in and draw in a fill or a color or whatever with no line around the outside at all, because it could be, I mean, that you can have that without having actual lines on there. It's kind of nice.
Let me show you. Yes, that's right. Good point. I can just take that stroke off completely. And then, so if I moved it, there it is. It's just there. I want to show you kind of a cool thing that I like. So imagine now I didn't want to go into SketchUp because it's easier for me just to use material override, which is the hidden line style and everything. And then I'm going to put on my pattern, my hatch patterns here in Layout. But in this example, maybe I want this car, I don't want to see the concrete through the car. Now, technically, I know that is concrete under the car, and maybe that is the right way to show this, or maybe it's better to just trace the car with a dashed line. But let's just, for fun, say, actually, I want the car to read over this. Let me ask you, Aaron, how would you approach that if I want to almost like mask out the concrete that's underneath the car, even though I know it's concrete?
Man, it's such a complex shape. It's not quite as simple as.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah, that's why I'm seeing how you would approach. You might approach this.
White out, maybe.
White out on my screen, and as soon as I zoom in, oh crap, that didn't work at all.
I mean, for me, again, I'm the guy who likes hand stitching. I would probably go trace it out and either do a mask or just do white. There, yeah.
So here's the issue with, now imagine I want to see the car, I want to see the detail of the car. So I want to mask out the concrete, but I don't want to cover the actual car. So first thing we could do is see if, so one thing I was going to test and it doesn't work, and I knew this wasn't going to work, but I wanted to prove it, was that, so masking this out is going to be tricky because the only way to do that is essentially when you draw your shape. So when you draw this shape, you need to just account for the fact you would draw around the car when you draw this shape. So because you can't just, because if I covered, yes, because if you're using raster, then you're going to see the white fill. I want to try something and see if this works. This is why I'm saying that the one way to do it would be to, as you're drawing your concrete, you trace around it and then that leaves it out. But what if I move the car, right? Then you have to redraw that shape. It's really complex. So I want to try something and see if this works. So bear with me. It's a little bit of a segue here. I'm going to take this car and I'm going to paste it off to the side. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my color override, view edge style profiles, view edge style edges, window shadow settings, go up and down. And then what I'm going to do is zoom in and I'm going to add this scene and I'm going to rename this car temp, right? And I'm going to save that. And we're going to pop over here into Layout. And I'm going to update this layout file. Update. And I should have a new scene. Let's see if this worked. I should have a new scene in my SketchUp model. Oops, what did I just do? Oh, that's why. So folks, when you are in SketchUp, be careful not to do what I've done. So if you're like playing with styles and you're updating styles, you want to be careful that you're not actually zooming or shifting your viewport as you're doing that. Because you'll see that when I'm in Layout, that my plan just shifted on me. And I was like, why did it do that? It's because I'm sitting here talking and I'm not paying attention to the fact that don't do that, pretty much. Try to make sure. Yeah.
Mostly to Tyson and Eric, but it happens.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it does happen. It happens. Okay, so back to where I was trying to go with this, which is if I paste this viewport, I'm going to make a copy of this viewport. If you copy and paste a viewport in Layout, it pastes automatically in place, by the way. So if you don't know where it is, it's because it pasted in place. And I'm going to check to see if I have a new scene tab called Car Temp. And stay with me, folks. Let's see. I'm onto something here. I know I am. Now I have this car here. If you come over here and you explode it, you get what's called a scaled drawing. So if you explode a SketchUp model, it becomes line work, vector line work in layout. And I love this feature because then I can just come over here and ungroup this. And now I have just this car. And you can see it's just the outline of the car. Now, my only problem is that let me see. I probably have to come over here. Oh, you know what I did? I know what I did. Do you know what I did wrong, Aaron? What I shouldn't have done before I exploded it?
Well, I'm busy taking notes over here, so I don't even know what's going on in your world.
You want to go to vector first. I think, because then when you explode
Before you explode it?
Yes, there it is. Because now you can change, now it's a vector. If you do raster, you're bringing in, if it's raster and you explode it, you're bringing in an image. And then you can't change the color. So that pink color that I have, I'm stuck. But now I can come over here and change the fill to white, and I can change the stroke to white, or I can turn the stroke off if it's not needed. And then what I've got here is I've got a mask now. And now you might say, well, that was an awful lot of work. I would have gone with Aaron's method. And if anyone who would have done that, I would have totally agreed with you. But I did want to prove.
You could be doing this for a more complex shape too, though. So
arrange.
Nick, I'd want to give Nick Mason on YouTube props. He did come in and tell you to switch to vector. Unfortunately, due to the lag we see about up to a minute of lag because of the service we use. So Eric didn't actually hear you say switch to vector until just a few seconds after he figured out himself is when your note came through, Nick. But thank you. Good job.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So that didn't even work after all that, because here's the reason why is because of the layer order. So, but anyway, I think it's a cool trick. I think it's cool to be able to bring your SketchUp model in, even if and then use it. Maybe in this case, it's not worth the effort, but you can explode it. Now you have geometry in layout that you can style. You can add strokes, fills. You can actually, you can also, because it's a scale drawing, you can change the scale of it. So if you come over to your scale drawing window, you can do that. So that's pretty cool.
So we did have a question, Eric. RT Cool asked, I was going to shoot you at this a little bit later, but we're here. How does do you know how exploded vector line work versus working off of a SketchUp model? Does that make your model heavier or lighter, or do you know?
Does it make your layout file heavier, you mean?
Yeah.
I think a little bit, because because it makes it a little bit heavier because you're bringing vector line work in. So depending on how complex the shape is, and depending on how heavy it is, like if you're bringing an AutoCAD file that's got tons and tons and tons of layers and tons of geometry, and you explode that and it's live in there, I'm imagining that you're going to see a little bit. But if it's a simple shape, no, it's just like adding lines. It's like almost as if I just traced the car and drew it. If it's a simple shape, you won't notice it at all.
Cool.
Yeah, just depends on the complexity. So that was shapes and fills. Totally messed up my plan because I was talking and I moved those. So I'm just skipping right over my plan view. But let's go into sections, and let's hope that I didn't mess up those, because what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time adding some dimensions. So what do you think about that? Does that work with you, Aaron?
I like it. Right. Yeah.
Hey, speaking of dimensions, that was a dimensions plug right there.
So we still have that coupon available, folks.
Yeah, if you didn't hear Aaron's plug, that was a perfect time to do that again.
If you're interested in joining us at Dimensions 2023 in Las Vegas in November, we will be there. You can come by, you can get certified, you can take a course on layout with Eric, and you can get 35% off of a ticket using the SketchUp DIMS coupon code. SketchUp DIMS. SketchUpDims. Use that for 35% off at checkout.
I wish I had some graphics, we could do them in real time, because you're saying it, but then me, I like to see SketchUp DIMS right across the screen. But that's all right. We can use our imaginations. We're all visual learners here.
I'll put it in the chat, so everybody else will see it, just not you.
So here's what we need to do with the dimensions. First thing I want to do, speaking of model dimensions and not conference dimensions is the same thing with strokes and patterns. Is I'm actually not doing a great job at making this a finished drawing set. I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit. I was like, maybe with this one, let's take at least one of these pages. Maybe it doesn't make sense to do it to all of them, but let's take this page here and really kind of round it out. So Aaron, you help me with what we think we need to call out and what we think we need to dimension. Because what I wanted to do is just bring up the point here is that your same thing with a stroke style and pattern style is that if I could set the dimensions, like depending on if I want to change the units, if I want to change the gap, if I want to change the precision. I like to push mine, like on a project like this, I would push the precision up to the nearest inch, usually, because we're not talking, fraction of an inch here, not for something where you're looking at the whole site, the whole project. But anyway, what you do is you can change all these settings here. And then once you like it, because the dimension tool is active, it will remember those settings. So if I wanted to just literally start putting some dimensions on there, I could do that.
Yeah, usually what I end up doing is putting one on, like you're doing, go correct it so it's right.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Then delete it and then start over again, because that way all my presets will be there. That changes pretty.
You could also use those for those that, like in this case, I'm going to change one to, I'm just going to make the stroke thinner. And you could use the eyedropper tool. So what you do is you say, I want to style this one, and then come back and match that one. So if it's easy just to lay them all out and not really care what they look like, you could just come in at the end and just go, just, you're right. Only make one look the way that you want it to look.
You can always group select them and then change also, but I always find it's easier to put dimensions in series, and that helps if your settings are already set beforehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of dimension series, this would be a good time to show off the, I wish there was a way that you could say, okay, I want to apply this style to all my new dimensions, right? In this case, What I would do if I do this, I have to come over here and say that, and then I have to say this, and then I have to come over here and say...
yeah. You want to have nothing selected when you first start changing the general. Yeah.
So what I was going to say is that you can do a dimension string. So if you click here to here, and then you come over to this next one and say, I want to know, in this case, I want to know the distance for this bookshelf, and then I want to know the clearance for the opening. So what I could do is you could just you double click. It's been a while since I've done this. And what it does is it picks up, I don't know if you saw that, I'll do it again, but you just double click down, and what it'll do is it'll pick up the string from the last place that you left off. So in this case, if I want to know the dimension of this banister, I would just come in, and it just depends on whether you want to be on center line or whether you want to be at the edge. Again, for a conceptual set like this, we're not actually going to build off of this. It's just kind of giving an idea of like, hey, is this possible? Is this more expensive? We're just kind of trying to get something to get an initial reaction. So double click that, and you can see there it is. It strings. And then the last one, if I wanted to string this gap, I could, because there is a gap. There's a little air gap there. So if your kid is really tiny and really skinny, it's probably not a good idea, because they could fall. They could get through there and fall. But I think
if you got a 2-inch wide kid, you should probably keep them in a jar or something.
Maybe if you have like a guinea pig or something like that, it's probably not a good idea to let them run around up on the loft. But then again, there is this opening where the stair is. So I guess use at your own risk, folks. And then there you go. You've got 3 feet there. So that's kind of a cool little tip of just doing dimension strings, which is super fast. Should we make a change to the model and say, you want to close that gap, Aaron, and then see what happens to our dimension string? Like, I don't really like that I laid this out at, I think it's 8 foot end to end. But maybe I want to use this handrail and just go over an inch and just kind of close that gap. So let's do that. Let's go, and then we'll see what happens to see if I did this right. My dimensions will auto update here in LayOut.
I was gonna say, let's make that gap a little bigger so it's easier to get to the fireman's pole. That should probably end up there.
Should there be a fireman's pole? Let's have a vote. Let's go to the chat.
You better not be watching this chat or watching this stream and not think that a house needs a fireman's pole.
I wanted to do, I like spiral staircases, to be honest with you. So I feel like anywhere I can get a spiral staircase into a design That would be ideal. All right. So
I can't argue with that. That's definitely underused.
So the trick is, and this probably isn't the best way to lay this out because it's probably better in plan view because it's actually at an angle, but hey, we're just going with it. So what I'm gonna do is I wanna take this thing, I wanna come into this handrail, and I'm going to grab this whole thing here, and I'm just going to move just this edge. I'm just gonna cheat it for right now, and I'm just gonna kind of shift this over, and I'm gonna go 1 inch, and I wanna see if I can close that gap a little bit more. So I just went over 1 inch, and I'm not worried about making this perfect at this point. And I'm gonna save that, and then let's pop over to layout. And then let's see what happens. Update. Whoops, not relink. Update.
Drum roll, please.
Drum roll. I'm not actually going to do it because it'll make my mic shake.
Yeah.
There you go. And look what happened. Our 2-inch gap is now a 1-inch gap. So, and now I got a nice even number of 8 feet instead of that 7'9". I'm not even going to call that gap out because it's kind of annoying to even call out a 1-inch gap. I'm just going to ignore that and just get rid of that. But folks, that's how easy it is. I
like it.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
If you want to change it. So let's add some labels and let's see how well organized I was when I built this, because I'm guessing that I wasn't that well organized. But we can always go back again and get better organized. So I'm going to grab a label. So a label is different from a dimension tag, in which case we're not calling dimensions, we're going to call out objects. So let's just point. You can see what it's doing here. If I zoom in closely, it's kind of turning red. If you look at where the cursor is, so that just shows that it's on the model. And that's good, because if you're just off of it, it may be pointing to something in the background, like the wall behind it. And so we want to kind of connect it to an edge, be careful there. So let's see here. I'm going to click down, and it's going to say, what is the group name? Or if it's a component, the component name. And in this case, it's called Loft Safety Railing. So I actually did, pat myself on the back. I actually did, no, I'm serious, because I didn't know, I couldn't remember when I built this if I had actually named anything.
Oh, absolutely. I was laughing. Yeah.
So
nice job, yesteryear me.
Good job, old Eric. I know, usually we do our future self favors, but I'm going to give my past self
well done.
Some props. Let's try it again and see, because at some point I will. Component definition. It's, that may be the company that makes this, or the model number, which is Wessex, which is, I don't know if that's actually right or not. So in this case, what I might do is say, well, I actually don't remember if that's the model or if that's the maker. So I'm just going to call it what it is. Claw, foot, tub, right? So then that's an example where it may actually be pulling the information from the component, but it may not be as useful. So I don't know, to be honest with you, I haven't used layout in a little while, so I'm really enjoying.
That seems to be coming back to you pretty quick.
I'm really enjoying this. Because we don't get to, we don't really, I'll be honest, in our day-to-day, we don't really get to do this very often. And so I enjoy just spending time in layout. And we don't because we don't really make construction sets necessarily for what we do, Aaron, unless we're creating a campus course or we're doing a live training like we're doing at Dimensions or at 3D Basecamp. But day-to-day, we don't really spend as much time in layout as I would like to.
I think that's 100% true. And I mean, some people ask about our design work or that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of it is what you see on camera is the design work or the SketchUp or layout work that we get to do. We don't work at a production company. SketchUp Trimble does not pay us to knock out drawings of our work or anything like that. So a lot of times that's it. It's kind of funny because Eric and I were just talking about going back to our old content and looking up how we taught something, because we didn't recall it. I was telling them how I have had 2 or 3 times had to go back and look up the video where I showed how to put multiple photos into a photo match model, because the first time I did it was for that video, and I hadn't done it since. So unfortunately, Hey, that content's there though. We can always go back. We learn from us too.
We do learn from us. I don't know if that's the right. Can you get that on a shirt, Aaron? We learn from us.
We learn from us.
Yes. I'm going to call this loft stair opening. I don't, built-in bookcase. So as you can see, some of these I did make the effort to name some of them. And this is kind of cool. Depending on what I'm trying to call out, it may be prompting me for actually not the component definition, but if I'm tagging an edge, it may want to say that length of that edge is 2 foot, say 2 foot 1 inch, I'll just round to the nearest inch in this case. So I could just grab that dimension, and what it's going to do, it's going to say this is, instead of using a dimension string, I can use a label to call out how big something is or how long something is. It's kind of cool, but I don't really want to do that in this case because you can see that's auto text. So that auto text is pulling from my SketchUp model as well. And then I'm going to do, in this case, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to call bed loft bookshelf. If you can hear if my keys are really loud, I apologized for that.
Peter on YouTube is calling out that you named this session All Things Layout Live, which shortens to All Things LOL.
Are we LOLing today? That is awesome. See, we can speak the language of the kids. No Freddie Prinze Jr. References, right. But if you do talk in acronyms and in emojis, we will connect better to our audience. I love our audience, by the way, because my connection to you is SketchUp. That's it. You know what I mean? And that's all we need because we're family. We have SketchUp, we have Layout, and we're best friends. Right? Wouldn't you say that? At 3 Basecamp,
It's awesome.
Everyone who shows up, you're just like, I want to give you a hug because I know why you're here, and we have that in common. And you're my new BFF.
And I don't want to toot our own horn or anything, but we have a pretty sweet set of users. I guess I'm tooting your horns, everybody. But yeah, we have a really awesome set of users that we get to hang out with, both virtually and in real life, and it's pretty cool to get to work with you guys. So that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean the fact that we've got these people giving up their, a good portion of their holiday. If you're in the U.S., holiday Friday, but if you're not in the U.S., still Friday, to come and sit with us and just hang and just talk SketchUp and Layout. I think that's pretty sweet. So I'm going to add some text labels instead of having arrows pointed. I'm just going to do some free floating labels. And I know I'll point out here that if you're on a Mac versus a PC, you're going to find a little bit of differentiation. Like whenever you see the color palette pop up, whenever you see the text palette pop up, it's going to look a little bit different for everybody, for us, because we're being sort of overridden by the OS X interface. So just remember, it's all good. It works. It all still works the same. It's just those are some little visual differences that you're gonna see. In this case, I'm going to give this a fill because what I want to do is override. I want to sort of go over, whatever's in that. And if I really wanted to, I could even go in and turn those garage doors off, but I'll leave it there. So that's the kitchen. And for those that aren't, if you're not sure, this is, I know in the UK, what do you call this? Is it a washroom, a powder room?
WC.
The WC? I'm going to call this the water closet. We'll call that the WC if you want. Fine with me. I think in Canada.
That's me just showing out how international I am.
I think you are going to be in Benelux, right? So you will be seeing some different terminology and languages than we're used to. So this is, so I want to kind of go to questions because we're not super close to time, but we're getting there. And I feel like this is a good point. I mean, I can keep, again, I could keep doing this, but I would rather make sure there's only one other thing I want to do is if our audience wants to see a very simple area report, I can show you why I set it up a certain way in SketchUp, and then we can work with an Excel spreadsheet here, and I can put that in like a little area summary, or we can just kind of just be casual and just kind of do some fun things. You tell me.
Yeah. Well, why don't you keep moving forward. You keep fine tuning this, and let's hear from you, chat. Let's hear, what did Eric not get to yet that you've had questions? This is
we said all things layout.
Things layout.
And, that's ambitious.
Yeah, that's right. So anything layout related that you have a question about, let's hear it.
It's not most things layout, it's all things layout.
That's right. And live. So this is the live part. This is where you have to ask the questions
Yeah, and the harder the
in the
better.
chat.
Like I want to, Aaron likes it when I stumble. So I want you. Let's give him something. And I don't mean stumble. I mean a problem that we get to work through together. So
Right.
give me something that's really challenging, and I might fumble my way through it, but that's okay.
But catching Eric off guard's not easy. So watching him stumbles works. So you guys are gonna have to bring it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. You can't go. Yeah. So anyway, that's a challenge extended.
yeah, let's hear it. And I like that's a bold thing that the more difficult, the better. That was, yeah. Okay, we got a question about using sheets and BOQ. Well, that's difficult because I don't have any idea what that means.
BOQ, you got to be careful that you have to remember I'm landscape trained, and then I not only didn't like working in CAD, so I stepped back to even broader and worked in planning and urban design. So anything that's going to be really construction or architecture related, I'll be the first to say I don't know. So you have to
B,
explain that.
B, I don't know what BOQ is, so there's still names are still being thrown out for what to call that the toilet room. So area calculations did come back, so that might be nice. We had a question about bill of quantities, but Eric's model doesn't actually include items to take off. So this would not be the perfect example of pulling up a bill or a set of quantities for a takeoff.
Well, no, I said that we would we could do basic ones. So we wouldn't go into like, let's take this cabinet and do a full schedule. But we could, like I said, we've got concrete that's going to need to be refinished. And we have a wood loft, that needs to be floored, or whether that's going to be carpeted or not. We have a bathroom that be tiled. So if we wanted to take some general quantities and then show how those, yeah, that's what I was referring to. If we're on is that the same thing? Hopefully that's the same thing as what they
that was BOQ, bill of quantities.
Bill of quantities. Okay, well, see, I didn't even know what that
I
is.
didn't catch that either. Let's see. So we got a couple minutes. So yeah, so you have your area calculation, or you have your areas in there. If you want to show some of those. Stroke properties came up. How to change the dimension color without affecting other stroke properties.
The dimension color, sorry, without, okay, yeah, we can do while we're here, we can stylize some stuff really quick, and then maybe move over into, I don't know how long it's going to take, and we've only got 15 minutes, so maybe we just need to, I think if we're going to do an area takeoff, we kind of need to do that.
I did see you stealth using the eyedropper tool to copy properties from one to another. That was, you didn't even mention it, you just did it. So
I just did it, yeah.
That might be worth.
Yeah, this is my property
there
line.
Also.
Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up here. I was just playing because we were deciding. So in this case, what I like about we talked about stealing from ourselves when we forget how we did something, but I like stealing from myself as well. Like when I create this document, if I spend a lot of time styling and stuff, I would just, when I do a new document, I would just open this one up and I would just, like you said, use that eyedropper, copy and paste some dimension stuff, take that text, bring those in. Whether that's part of your template or not, I definitely would, if I like the way this looks at the end, I would definitely steal from myself. So, yeah, that's pretty simple. Anything you're styling falls within the same category of the shape style. So if you wanted to change the color, it's as simple as clicking on the stroke color. And then you can see that one, the one that I called out there is pink. And then if I wanted to bring that to the front, so then that one sits above, or for some reason wanted to make that a little bit thicker so that stands out. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but in this case, maybe I want to call attention to something in particular, or I want to maybe even color code my dimension string. So I know that one of those is for this and something else is for this. Totally could do that. Now text is separate though. You'll notice that that's shape style. So when I change this, if I did want to change the whole thing, you'd go in and you can see that's auto text because it's being, the actual dimensions being pulled from the SketchUp model. You would come in here and open up the text panel, and I would just match that same color. And then you can see that now I have a pink. Now the cool thing about this is I think, let's see here, if I come over here and say style, and grab that, it's kind of cool because what it's doing is it's actually remembering, when I use the eyedropper, it's remembering both the shape style and the text style. So it's formatting both of those at the same time. So if you did change one of them and you want to change all of them, that's super simple. And
very cool.
Yeah. Okay. It's a little bit different than I think in CAD, where you go into a properties box and then you change the dimensions properties, and then that updates them universally because they're being handled as a settings parameter, not as like we are here in LayOut, where we're changing them individually. So something to think about. So let's do a takeoff. 10-minute takeoff. Okay. So for those that, I'm back in here real quick, and then we'll wrap up. So I'm back in here, and I have this just by color. And you can see that these were just, I literally just grabbed in, I just went into the loft, and I just grabbed that face, which is the face of the wood loft, copied that, and then pasted that in place. And then there it is. So you can see now, you say, well, why did you do that? You have duplicates. Yes, but in this case, I did it at the end. So I don't imagine, I'm hoping that this loft is sort of somewhat set. And of course, if a big change is required, then I would rerun, I'd rerun the area calcs. But there's this cool extension that I'm going to check to see if I've got it loaded. So give me 1 second. Do you know which one I'm referring to, Aaron, before I pull it up?
No.
It's NROTH, narrowing it down. NROTH has one that's called Material.
Saying it's from NROTH, they limits it to 80 extensions, I believe, something like that.
Is she the
most prolific extension? Last I checked, the most prolific extension developer we have on the warehouse.
Is that so? It's a little bit of a joke to say like, oh, let's narrow it down by saying it's NROTH's extension. Now you know what I'm talking about.
50% of the extensions out there. Good.
NROTH Material Area Calculator. So a simple way to do this, very, very simple way to do this, which is to run the material area calculator. And I'm not going into reports right now because, to be honest with you, I can't always get everything perfect when running reports in SketchUp. So I'm actually just doing a simplified version of this. We have report features in SketchUp, which you could look into, but for this, I'm just going to use this extension because it's super simple. So I purposefully colored all of the different materials in my area takeoff with different colors. And then if you want to save yourself some time, you actually, it's kind of a fun thing you can do, is that you can, in your model, I don't know, I can't remember. Aaron, do you remember how somehow this is called loft, which is yellow. Wood loft. How did I change the actual, somehow I gave the material a name. So I actually spent the time to give these materials a name. So you can see that this one here, it's actually called loft definition, but you can see that the quantities are being calced by material. So the material itself, so I knew which one was which. I gave the material a name, and it's called wood loft. So that's one way to do it, is to actually do this by material. Maybe that's not the best way to do it, but I thought that'd be fun. Let me open.
So you just duplicated something and then renamed it, I'm assuming.
Yes. Yes. I just applied a material to the face. So you can, if you know you can override the materials, you can actually apply it to the face itself. Now, but if you want it, but because I'm using materials in this case, I did it to a copy. So that way I could, when I run the report, I'm running it just on those. I could separate those from the rest of the model. So, and then in this case here, what I would do is I would have to copy. Unfortunately, I didn't know, it's been a while since I've done this. What's another way? Let's ask I'm not an expert in this. I don't do this very often. What would be another way to do this, and see who from the chat knows, while I just kind of copy these from one column over to another.
Yeah, how do you guys do takeoffs? What's your preferred? These are area takeoffs too, so not material lists on this. So don't say the cut list extension, but doing a quick material takeoff. I admit I'm fairly brute force when it comes to this, and I tend to right click on a surface and then take that measurement out of entity info and manually put it somewhere. So I don't even use a fancy extension.
Yeah, probably in the time that it took
step
me
up.
to format that spreadsheet, you could have just done it. You could have just done exactly what Aaron said. You just go in here and you select a face, and it says right there, 184.1 square feet, and you just copy that number and paste that in. So if you're not doing a ton of stuff, it may actually be easier to do it the sort of what I'm going to call the old-fashioned way or the manual way, because you have really specific control. There's no setup required, there's no extension required, there's no export required, there's no formatting required. You just copy and paste. But if you got a ton of stuff and you have some really complex and things are spread all over your model, that's where I think things get a little bit trickier. So it just depends on the simplicity of it.
And I think going back to something we talked about earlier, which was, doing things manually, send to layout versus opening a template and manually importing the model. I think for me, because I just experience with that, it's easier for me to go through and take off those numbers and then adjust the numbers. So I have 184 square foot. I'm going to call that 200. I can do that kind of thing too. But yeah, there's other options for sure. You can definitely, like you're saying, you got 6 different kinds of flooring in a model. It's pretty cool to be able to just get a square footage of each material.
Well, in this case, this is why I did this aerial. Speaking of, so this is why I did this aerial here, is because I wanted to have a page that just looked a little bit more interesting. So when I do my area calcs, let's see, did I preserve scale? Yeah, there we go, preserve. What I want to do is shrink that down a little bit, give myself some room for the area calcs, and then I want to come over here and say preserve scale and get my tree back. There we go. Okay, so let's import, excuse me, let's insert. It's fun when you haven't done this in like 2 years and then you still remember some basic stuff. So
just stop talking and let muscle memory take over.
Yeah. So I'll say this for those that do work in Excel and you like Excel and you spend a lot of time and you're good at it. Sorry, I might be catching
What planet are you from?
That COVID that's going around again. I might have that. If you do, what planet are you? If you do, that's great actually, because what you can do is you can spend a lot of time styling things here. Like I'll give you an example. If I came in here and just really quickly, and if I just said, let's give every other column, just really super simple. Like for me, sometimes it's easier to read when I can see those, I can see the differentiation of the list. So then let me try this again and let's see if this works. I'm going to insert this and let's see if it gives me a choice. Open. It says import Excel formatting. That's kind of what I glazed over last time because I didn't think it was a big deal, because what you could do is choose to whether you want to just bring in a very simple basic table like I have here. And what that does means it's just, I'm going to let layout. I'm going to style it in layout. Change the font, change the text, change strokes, colors. I'm going to make it look pretty in layout. Or if you're a pro at Excel and you've done all this work and you have a beautiful, very complex spreadsheet, you can say import and preserve the formatting. And hey, that didn't work. Aaron.
Hey, this is where we started.
I'm blaming Aaron on this one. Usually what this means is that when something doesn't work, it usually means it's time for me to just say goodbye, folks.
It is 7 to 2. We have been on just shy of 2 hours, so you may have used it all up. You may be running on an empty tank right now, Eric.
We might be. I'm going to, yeah, folks.
that was so
underwhelming.
That was epitome of like defeat. So I'm yeah.
Do you know I did this? That's 2 in a row. When I did my Haunted Mansion one, I had just taught myself Fredo Animator, and I had gotten it to work in a test, and then we got to the last 10 minutes of the stream. Go back and watch that one if you haven't seen that one. It's actually it was fun because I was so confident that we were going to animate it at the end, and we only like partially animated it. And I said, I quit.
Yeah. Using a brand new extent. I will say that there was a time where I actually went in and on a live stream installed and tried to use extensions that I had never done before. We don't do that anymore. And there's a very good reason for that, because I don't know, I guess because we don't broadcast. It's just not. It doesn't look good for us. It doesn't look good for the whoever made the extension. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Don't do that.
And I made sure to give Fredo some mad props because his extension's powerful. It's awesome. It's user error. I taught myself, like, I only spent about 2 hours playing around with it. It wasn't him. It's totally me just not setting it up correctly. On that note, Fredo, if you're out there, if you're watching, then it's not you, it's me.
There's definitely, we do, we try, and we obviously do our best to get the best possible information and make these enjoyable, but it is hard doing this every single week. Sometimes it's not quite as fluid as it could be. So yeah, but yeah, I think this is good. I think this is nice.
I think this is a good place. I'm gonna just because it's gonna bug me, just my OCD. I'm just gonna give that page name. I'm just gonna call this. We're just gonna give this like the intro page. So garage, ADU, remodel, concept, and then I feel like I could. Okay. So that's it, folks. I'm going to just really quickly go through. We did a plan view that then I shifted, so I'm going to pretend like I didn't do that one. We did some takeoffs, really basic. I know I would love to spend the whole time, looking at different ways to do area takeoffs, looking at ways to organize those and how to quantify and classify all that information. That's a whole stream onto itself. We looked at setting up views, right? Making sure that we know the difference between what needs to be set up in SketchUp versus what can be changed and adjusted in Layout. We looked at the difference between vector and raster rendering, knowing that what you see on the screen is not what you get when you export. It's going to be actually much better. This is a preview. Don't worry. We also talked about we talked a lot about annotations. So just styling, setting up presets, applying, changing styles, and making sure that we're extracting information as much as possible from the SketchUp model. If something changes, that's okay. Your dimension strings and all your labels and everything change and update it with it. So looked at a few things. I don't know if it's all things layout, but I would say that it is most things layout. We covered a lot in 2 hours together, folks.
Well, even the stuff we did in SketchUp was in preparation for Layout, so I think LOL still works.
All right, we're going to LOL. We're ending on LOL today, folks. We are a few minutes early, but that's okay. Any last-minute announcements, Aaron, that I'm not thinking of before we say goodbye to our community?
I can't think of anything. We will be back next week. I will be modeling, and so come back and hang out. Let's do that. I think I don't have a specific plan, but last week we tried to do some machine drawings, and I didn't get to the ones I wanted to do, which were the frying pan and the wrench. So might be modeling some stuff from drawings, but we'll post in the forum. We'll let you guys know specifically what's going to happen, but it'll be fun.
All right. Well, as always, everyone, we do this every week, as Aaron just said. If you haven't subscribed, do that already, because that way you'll get the notifications for when we go live. But also when we do our little bite-sized stuff comes out throughout the week. And I'm going to wrap up by plugging my course one more time, which is here. You can find it on learn.sketchup.com. We'll put that in the comments, so don't worry if you don't have that memorized. If you haven't already been and checked out our campus, it's totally free. You just need to log in, and it's self-paced, so go at your pace, cherry pick the lessons that you like, download the exercise files, and follow along with us. So, Aaron, I think on that note,
I think we're there.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great Friday. If you're in the States, have a great Monday if you get the day off. If not, have a great Monday anyway.
Thanks all.
Okay. See ya.